Rodolphe, vraiment un plaisir. I'm really happy that you took the time. I guess a natural place to start our conversation is a lot of the news lately has been that, we're deconfining, in the next few weeks. Are you excited to actually have real potluck dinners again soon?
That's your intro question. That's good. Yeah, for sure. I'm a very social person by nature, so I'm really looking forward to having this social life back. We're actually slowly but surely reopening the offices, respecting all the safety guidelines, but with the people being vaccinated. So slowly, we're reintroducing, the culture of showing up at the office while again respecting all the safety guidelines. But yeah, so I'm really, really happy to have that. I don't host potluck dinners that often, but of course, seeing people is what I live for. So I'm super happy that we're in that position today.
Yeah, I think we'll talk maybe a little bit about COVID and the impact it's had on your business, if whether it's been a good or a bad thing. But I want to maybe talk about you for to start. And you started your company now. It's been 6, 7 years. You've been going at it. It seems like right after school. Was that always the plan when you moved here from France? To like, hey, we want to start a company, or was it more opportunistic that you kind of like went down this entrepreneurial path?
Yeah, no, it was completely opportunistic. The story is funny because it was completely opportunistic. I stopped my studies for a year. I was working in Paris, and I really loved, working instead of studying. I wasn't a very good student. And when I came back, I had still like 2 semesters of work to do, and I was bored. Wasn't made to do that. It's not the same pace when you're studying versus working. So anyway, so I had that first idea, and I was with my roommate Louis, who became later on my co-founder and my partner. We had that crazy idea of potluck first phases. So people should choose what store they want to open in their neighborhood and so on. And we started that idea, and for the first year we really struggled for 3 years, 3 4 years. But at the end of the year, where I was doing both, like both studying HEC Montreal and my company, at the end of that year, I remember I called my parents and I told them, well, you see, mom and dad, I think I want to give a real shot to that idea. And I was doing a sort of a coming out, saying that I'm an entrepreneur. You see, it was hard because my parents wanted me to take a good job in a big consulting firm, whatever. And I told them that, and they really laughed because they were like, "Yeah, we knew exactly since you were little that you would go down that path." So it surprised nobody. I was the first. It only surprised me. I was like, "I think I'm an entrepreneur," and people were like, "No, you are an entrepreneur since you're born. So go ahead." So yeah, that's kind of the backstory here.
That's a great story. That's a great story, right? So your parents knew before you. Like maybe talk about those early years, right? Because sometimes like success is evident in hindsight. Where it's like, of course, Spotlight, it makes sense. You guys found product market fit. You're building a company that's really market research for the digital age. Was there any point in time where you're like, this is not going to work, and that you didn't believe in what you guys were doing, or as you're trying to navigate and get those first customers? So take us back and understand, maybe any pivotal moments in the company's history.
Yeah, so I can't emphasize enough on how difficult it has been to build that company. We were that close to give up several times. Several times. We've pivoted 5 or 6 times. I don't even count now. But we've even pivoted during COVID, actually a year ago. So this business is today successful because it has been a succession of pivots. I've eaten ramen noodles for 3 years. I had zero money, but you can't imagine how much zero means. And today, since let's say 2018, it's pretty successful. It's really skyrocketing now. We have an exponential curve. I'm hallucinating the revenues we're able to generate now in a couple of weeks. So yeah, but it's been very, very difficult. It will take a while to tell you all the different pivots and the different business models we had. But basically, the baseline is we've always been able. We're a survey. We're disrupting, even if I dislike the terminology, but we're disrupting the survey industry, right? So we're serving people like you and I through social networks, that sort of thing. And basically, what we've always been successful at was to survey people. We've always been good at that. We started in the street, where I was literally personally intercepting people in the street, asking them questions, silly questions with my iPad, just to learn. And we've always been successful at that. and then we moved on social networks, etc. But we've always been good at collecting insights, but we did not know who to sell to. So we've tried to sell to landlords, of empty stores, then to entrepreneurs who are starting their own retail stores, then to public sectors, then to shopping malls, big retailers, and now we're selling to Fortune 500s and big consulting firms company. So we've radically shifted in terms of clientele base, and that has been a very complex journey actually.
Yeah, that's fascinating, right? So going from selling to mom and pop stores to some of the biggest companies in the world that have seen on your
Yeah,
website. That's a pretty big shift. I love the founding story, right? You and your partner in the plateau, kind of discovering that, hey, there's insights here that connectivity, the internet can surface, right? And then being able to grasp these, like you said, collect these insights and then repackage them. Maybe give us the version of Potluck today. So exactly how does your business model work? How do you collect these insights? And then how do you surface these insights to your customers?
yeah. So today we're in the survey industry. So it's a huge market, by the way. The research industry, it's worth 90 billion. People don't realize how big it is. It's huge. And basically today, if you want to survey people, you have either what we call CAWI or CATI, computer-assisted web interviews, or computer-assisted telephone interviews. So the latter is, your landline, if you still have one, would ring and it will be a silly interviewer trying to get insights from you. Okay, that's today 30% of the interviews conducted worldwide, and the rest is conducted by what we call web panels. So these are professional respondents who are paid. It's often through Air Miles points or whatever, Amazon gift cards, etc. But professional respondents who are paid, who are incentivized to answer to survey. But basically, all of this to say that people like you and I, we don't take surveys. And this is, I think, the reason why we've been successful in that industry. It's because we don't like surveys. I don't like surveys. I don't like taking surveys. I mean, I don't enjoy doing it. And we started with that very, very baseline, asking ourselves, okay, what should we do so that people like you and I take surveys? And basically, we don't take surveys because we don't have time. You don't have time. You're a busy person. You've got work, you're running a podcast. I'm not sure if you have kids or not, but you're a busy person, right? And even if you were unemployed, retired, and had plenty of time, the last thing you would like to do in a downtime is a survey, right? Nobody is telling himself, I'm going to do a little survey now. It doesn't exist. It simply doesn't exist. So we had to solve these two issues, the fact that people have no time and no interest. And how did we solve it? We solved it thanks to social networks. The craziest thing today is at any downtime you have in your day-to-day life, any downtime, you take your phone and you start scrolling your newsfeed on whatever social network you're using. So Twitter, LinkedIn, Instagram, Facebook. So I know, Nectarios, that the only window I have to survey someone like you is at that precise moment. If I'm telephoning you, if I'm sending you an email, if I'm intercepting you in the street, it's not the right time. But when you're doing that, it means you're in the downtime. And secondly, it's not because you're in the downtime that you're going to take a survey on winter tires. However, you belong to the 0.1% of the Canadian population running a podcast, right? So you have a natural interest towards that little group of people you belong to. So I know that if I'm pushing an ad on Instagram, let's say you use Instagram, saying, hey, you're a Canadian podcaster, answer this survey. I know I have one chance out of 10 that you're going to take my survey. And that's the key to Potluck. We're getting people at the right time on topics that are niche enough, so below 1% of incidence rate in the population, so that they have a strong sense of belonging towards that topic. So that's what we do. We survey parents who live in Brooklyn whose kids are suffering from dyslexia. We survey German electrical car engineers who are decision makers when purchasing the oils that are going into the engine. We're going that niche, and these insights are ordered, because we're not doing it without any order for clients. They're ordered by the top consulting firms, so the BCG, Bain, McKinsey, KPMG, EY, PwC, Oliver Wyman, etc. of the world, and top brands. So we work with L'Oreal and Royal Canin and Nike, etc. And these guys, they're using us anytime they need to survey a niche audience, like Greek or French immigrants living in Montreal. It's niche, but you still need a sample of 1,000 people. Well, it's not that niche actually. That's what we were saying.
Well, 1,000 is, yeah, it's I think, what is it it used to be okay in stats, but 1,000 is already pretty good number, right, to get a representative sample of any population.
Yeah.
How does your distribution work, right? You mentioned an ad. Do you have to pay for ads? Do your clients pay for ads, or like, yeah, just how does that work in terms of mechanism on the social networks?
Yeah, so what's very difficult, and you need to understand that to understand what's the mechanism. What's very difficult is that it's not as simple like what I thought initially. Like you put a post on Facebook and you get whoever answers your survey and you're good to go. Not at all. You need a representative sample of that population. So let's take the Canadian podcasters. All right. So you have 15% of them in Quebec, 35% of them in Ontario, whatever, etc. And then you have 50% of them being females, 50% being males, and then you have 20% of podcasts being business oriented, 20% being health oriented, etc. If I want to survey a representative sample of the Canadian podcaster, I need to make sure I have the right number of Quebecer, the right number of Ontarian, the right number of females, males, the right number of people regarding the different topics. I need to get the right distribution. However, the social media algorithms are made to optimize for conversion. So if I put a post on Facebook out there, and they're for God knows what, but Ontarian female who are podcasting about healthcare are the one taking it, then Facebook is going to push only towards that target, right? And then I'm going to have a highly biased sample. Whereas even if you are a business podcaster based in Quebec, you cost me 80 times the price of my Ontarian female healthcare podcaster, I still need your opinion, and I still need to get, 17 people like you. And that's what's very difficult. We're going against the grain. We're getting to get the exact, we call that quota sampling, but to get the exact quota so that the sample you have at the end is representative of that population you're going after. It's like political polling, but applied to whatever you want to poll, whatever you want to do, whatever population you want to survey.
So you guys have built I want to say like a digital marketing expertise essentially, right? So you're piggybacking off Facebook ads, Google ads, Snapchat, TikTok, basically all the platforms that offer front end access. So if you take AdWords as an example, you'll put in the targeting and then essentially find the prerequisite number of people and then show them ads with the survey that they complete. Is that the right way to frame it?
Yes, exactly. So basically what the key behind Potloc was to marry two worlds, the world of research with all their codes, all their biases you don't want to have, coverage bias, auto-selection bias, whatever, and the world of paid social. So it's the combination of both worlds that are radically different, by the way, that made us successful. So it's not as simple as just using Facebook advertising thing. There is a lot of algorithm behind machine learning nowadays as well to be able to optimize for to get. We know German students are on LinkedIn between 4 and 6 p.m. and they will not click unless there is a car in the picture, and never ask a question about their expected salary. Otherwise, they will drop in the middle of the questionnaire. So all of that is learning we have, and any new respondent we have, we're getting smarter and smarter and smarter, and we're optimizing for the N+1 respondents, basically.
Yeah, that's amazing. That's amazing. Yeah, so it's like obviously like digital marketing with a huge data science component. It seems like exactly. Has it become an unfair advantage also on the selling side? Are you able to use this to get more customers? Like find out, that marketing manager that wants to build a survey. Like I imagine today you're doing a lot of sales like over the phone and B2B, classic B2B sales. But do you have plans to expand to use this capability also to grow, build, your marketing
demand gen, inbound strategy?
Exactly. Yeah. Without giving away too much of the secret sauce, I'd be curious.
No worries. The funny thing is not that much actually. When you land McKinsey, for example, as a client, you need to be vetted by. They usually have a very, very strict central team vetting that as a data provider, you're good enough, and the data quality you're providing is qualitative enough so that all McKinsey consultants in the world who are charging $2,000 per hour can use your data to make their strategic recommendations. So it's not an easy sell process. We have to be vetted by these groups. Takes a lot of hassles, take a lot of verification. You have now CCPA, GDPR, and all these friendly acronyms you have to deal with. And so it's not that easy. It's not an inbound sales. You pay online, blah. So you need to land these accounts, and then you can expand individually to all these consulting firms. But yes, we do have an expertise in marketing, but we have a very talented sales team. who is knowledgeable about the research overall, because it's very technical what we're selling, and who is able to accompany our very smart clients, the McKinsey managing partner, across the process of purchasing data from social sampling, which is kind of new in the industry.
Yeah. Remember back in my day, there was this all the rage, like in the early days of digital marketing, of like social media monitoring, right? So it's like getting the sentiment analysis, and like companies like Radiant 6, that's been a while, but there was a huge Canadian success story bought by Salesforce. So curious as to like, how did you differentiate what you guys are doing versus like social media monitoring? I know it's a different kind of like lens, but it's not too dissimilar at the same time.
Yeah, so it's primary versus secondary data. Both are needed actually. So you need to observe. That's what secondary data is doing. That's what social media listening is doing. And sometimes you need to ask as well. That's primary research. That's what we do basically. You don't get the same answers because it's not the same sport, but both are complementary. If you have to make a decision on whether or not you want to launch, I'm going to continue my analogy. You want to launch your podcast in France, where I grew up, as you can see by my accent. You're going to have to observe what's up there already. So that's called secondary research. So you could do social listening or whatever to observe. All right. But at one point you'll be like, you know what? I'm going to conduct a little survey on what's the type of content people are expecting, etc. At what time should I broadcast if I'm live, whatever. And that you can't just observe. At one point you're going to get a representative sample of your future audience, the audience who you would like to build for your podcast, and ask them these questions you have in mind. So it's two different sports, and they're perfectly complementary. We've never, to put it very bluntly, we've never lost a deal against a social listening company. Never, ever, because it's two different things.
Yeah, I'm gonna have to, I'm gonna take a note. I have someone I need to put you in touch with, giving me ideas here for partnerships for you guys. So what's the vision? Like, you guys raised a ton of money. Seems like things have been going well. How big do you see the opportunity, Rodolphe, right now? You mentioned that $90 billion market. So it's kind of a two-part question. Like, where do you see it? And then secondly, given the nature of the internet, like always, people assume you fall in category A, right? Like the classic example of like Uber, right? Like it's a taxi company. Well, actually, they've kind of changed the boundaries of transportation beyond just taxis. So curious as to how you think about your business. Do you see opportunities beyond just surveys, beyond making that 90 billion could be actually maybe much bigger if you expand the horizon of what you do? So curious to hear you a little bit on the vision.
Yeah, so it's a very good question. So actually, within the 90 billion market research, I'm a very focused person. So in that market, only 18 billion is spent on sampling. All right, the rest is software, professional services, market research, so secondary research, etc. So we're only going after 18 billion. I'll just start with that. It's big enough. The pool is big enough for me. If I take 50% of that market share, I'll be a happy man, right? So I want to stay hyper focused. What's interesting with what we're bringing to the table is we're making surveys a commodity. I think if you remind, I'm not sure if you studied business or not, but there is macroeconomy 101 in any business school, where you have the curve of demand and the curve of offer. Well, we are the demand curve. We are the only research overall is the only way of estimating demand. Offer is what people are talking about all the time. So survey is made to last because people will always need survey, and that's what the crisis taught me actually, that we're an essential good, because when companies are lost, what they're doing is trying to survey their consumers to understand how they will buy their thing. So surveys are there to last, but it just needs to be reinvented, because today people who are taking surveys are not representative of the rest of the population, and this is what we're addressing. And we're also enlarging the market because we're giving the opportunity to survey niche audiences that weren't available before, basically, because with today's solution you can get audiences, maybe incident rate of 10% of the population, maybe all the healthcare population of Quebec. Okay, that's something you can do, but you can't get the staff of Hôpital 5 Heures in the north of Montreal, while we can get that. So yeah, we're improving we're enlarging the range of things that can be done thanks to survey. But it's big enough for me. The the cake is big enough. I don't want more things right now. 18
Well,
billion is a good target.
I was saying, well, like it sounds like the pie will just grow, like the CAGR of the industry will
Yeah.
grow because it'll just be easier to do based, like based on tools like that you guys are developing. Um, so in terms of like you guys have obviously raised, you see a big you see a big market opportunity. What do you think are the next milestones for growth, and maybe in line with that, how has COVID accelerated your business? You mentioned exponential growth that you guys are seeing. You're curious as to how the impact of the pandemic has affected you in lines with your growth expectations that you guys had.
Yeah. So it's a long story. It's been a hectic last 14 months. So basically, we've always had the same technology, what we call our social sampling technology, but we used to be only selling it to retail and real estate because we have that capacity to survey people within a very limited radius, like trade area. And basically, we were able to get 1,000 people living in 1 kilometer around a given store or whatever. And during COVID, of course, retail and commercial real estate shopping malls collapsed immediately. So we've lost our entire clientele base and our pipeline overnight, almost. Beginning of, when was that? Like end of March, beginning of April, everything disappeared. And we had to pivot. That's why I told you my last pivot was less than 1 year ago. And we're like, okay, so we've got an amazing technology. Who can it be applied to? And we're lucky enough to have these consulting firms and big brands. We're starting slowly with them, and then with COVID, it boomed completely. These guys needed to understand what was happening in the market of the windows market in Germany, and then what was happening with hairdressers in Italy, and they were all over the place. They needed to understand and assess what was happening everywhere in all the industries of the world. So we literally boomed overnight. And last but not least, a lot of surveys are conducted face to face, like focus groups, etc. And all of that disappeared as well. So they were looking for new solutions in the market. So at the very beginning of the crisis, I'll be honest, at the very beginning of the crisis, I was like, okay, we're dead. I'm not selling hand sanitizer. I'm not selling masks. My entire client base is dead. They're closed for many months. The last thing I want to do is survey their shoppers because they have none basically. So that's the big learning of the crisis. It's to be able to keep the same product but pivot towards another clientele.
Yeah, what's that expression? You have to be the good to be lucky, lucky to be good. It sounds like you guys pivoted in the right way, considering at first I'm sure it was pretty scary, like March of last year, oh my God, retail's closing down. But then, like you said, those additional insights of like, well, consumer behavior is changing. People are going to need to find out exactly how it's changing. Curious, without maybe revealing the customer or any sensitive, like confidential, like studies that you've done, has there been any interesting insights that you guys have surfaced when it comes to consumer behavior, like changing patterns? Like, of course, people talk about more online shopping, things like this that are pretty obvious. Have there been any non-obvious learnings that you guys have been able to find out?
It's a very good question. I didn't prepare for that one. So first of all, I invite your listeners to go on potloc.com on the resources page where we have some public studies that we're co-publishing with our clients with trends we find interesting. We've done one interesting study. That's the first that comes to mind. Sorry if it's the most relevant example, but we've done an interesting study in partnership with Rodolphe Barrere to see how gender inequality was transposed into remote work. Basically, the question we asked to female executives was: do you feel your workplace is more inclusive now that you're remote, or do you feel that the fight that I support, by the way, of gender equality in companies has been abandoned because we have more urgent matters? And surprisingly, it's bad, of course, but the vast majority of the female executives that we've surveyed told very bluntly, like that's the last of the worries right now as we speak. So the gender equality thing has been completely abandoned during that crisis. So I think it's an interesting feedback, though, even though it doesn't, it's potentially representative of something which is not considered as urgent. But still, that's the type of study we can do, and this is a non-common insight, right? That we've been able to get.
Yeah, I was gonna say, yeah, like priorities have shifted, right? Because of the pandemic. Maybe to switch gears and talk about you, right? Like you've received some accolades as an entrepreneur, and rightfully so. In your experience now, having scaled to like 100 plus people for your company across multiple offices, I'd be curious to get your insights as to like, are there any key lessons, right, after 5 or 6 pivots? Like outside of the specific thing, like you mentioned, the exact pivot itself, have you distilled any principles as to like, maybe there's a lesson that I learned the hard way that may be interesting for other people to pick up on? So, yeah, broader principles as an entrepreneur.
I have a ton. I have a ton of them. I'm keeping a Trello list with all the key principles that I need to apply in all my thinking. So you know what? I always have the Trello list near me, so I can easily pull this out. But basically, what I have written in front of me all day long. First question is, what would I do if I had 3 months of burn rate? What would I do if I knew the company would crash in 3 months? Because that helps me prioritize things. Second question that I'm asking myself all the time: what would Elon Musk do tomorrow if he was in my shoes? Like Elon Musk, CEO of Potloc, what would that guy who is 100 times more brilliant than me, what would he do? I'm like, okay. It's a good way. It's a good thinking process. I've got another one, which is A players want to play with A players. We do have only A players at Potluck. We're very, rigorous in our recruitment process, and we're only hiring like top people. I'm very proud of the team we have, but you can't bring B players when your team is only composed of A players. Another question that I'm asking at the end of every single day, I'm asking this question: what have I improved today? Because my role is to improve, it's not to execute. So every single day, I'm asking myself, what have I improved? Well, anyway, I've got plenty of things that I'm asking myself. Do I have any toxic people in my team, etc., etc. So these are all questions that I have that I'm asking myself on a daily basis to make sure I have my train of thoughts right, and I have my thinking process more than my train of thoughts. I have my thinking process right. So yeah, I have tons of them.
I'm going to steal this idea of the Trello. And we're going to start with some of these points that you raised. I think you brought up three good ones, right? So team, the quality of the team, the notion of prioritization, right? Like I think the frame of like, if I'm somebody else, what would that person do? It kind of forces you to like properly prioritize when sometimes you're, how should I say, like you're too much in the trees versus look at the forest. But by forcing yourself to look at the forest and okay, I need to change this. And then I think self-improvement, which I think is a great kind of like, okay, if our company's growing at 50%, how do I improve at 50% year over year? We talk about that first one about team. So like any lessons, in remote work that you've learned that have been successful from culture building, from team building, that now as we still move, it seems that we're moving more to like, okay, we're going to be able to meet in person, hopefully soon, but there'll still be this notion of hybrid offices. A lot of companies will still want to choose remote. So any lessons that you learned in terms of like team and culture that you think are be important moving forward?
Yeah, first of all, I'm saying that I'm chief culture officer. So to me, culture is the one most important thing. Culture is our main competitive advantage. Period. So that's the most important thing. So I can't talk enough about culture. That's how we retain people. That's how we attract people. That's thanks to our great culture that we serve well our clients, etc., etc. For the remote question, yeah, basically it's very very simple thing, and I won't reinvent the wheel here. But basically, performance is there, culture is threatened in a full remote context. That's the thing. So I think my team has never performed that well since the last 12 months. I mean, we've had that tremendous growth, and it's really thanks to the amazing people we have at Potluck. However, culture, well, you're kind of losing slowly the sense of belonging to the group. You're losing the why. You're not seeing the colleagues you're helping with your work. You're not seeing their faces, Zoom apart, of course. But you're losing the why. You're waking up, working, going to bed, waking up, working, going to bed, etc. Whereas to me, that company is an entrepreneurial journey. It's a human venture. What drives me is to see people happy. What makes me a fulfilled entrepreneur is that I know that I'm employing 100 people and they're overall super happy. All right. So, and that is my contribution to the world. It's my very modest contribution to the world, but I am making 100 people happy with their work. And I'm like, that's good. It's me contributing to the society. And it's less easy to see when you're fully remote. So I lost a little bit the sense of why am I doing that, right? Why am I working like crazy? Because the truth is I'm working like crazy for the people I have in, right? And when you're not seeing these faces, you're losing sometimes that sense. So that's my biggest learning, basically.
Yeah, I really like how you position a chief culture officer as like kind of the most paramount thing. Well, how do you think? What do you think about the Potluck as a brand and as a brand narrative? It seems like you have such a great story, and you communicate it so well. So props to you for that. But as a brand moving forward, and as you continue to grow, how will the brand evolve, and how will it change?
Well, we need to make surveys sexy again. If you ask people what are the words that they hate the most, I'm pretty sure you have COVID. Pretty sure you have maybe sharks, and survey will arrive very soon in the list, right? So I want to make that fashion again because I do think that surveys properly done are necessary to the world we live in, right? A lot of people are asking for changes and less whatever. You have plenty of a good fight, I would say, that are conducted everywhere in the world, and sometimes being able to have to say that within the frame of a survey towards the company, offering that service or that product, it's a very good way to express and to make things change. So we do see a lot of surveys on brands asking their clients if they would be ready to pay more, a little bit more their product if the product was sourced locally, and they're measuring that. And not necessarily, of course, but the latest survey we've co-published with Simon Kutcher in France, I think 70+% of people said yes, and they gave the price. They were ready to pay for the product to be produced. It was vegetables produced in France instead of being produced in other countries. So all of these, you can move the needle thanks to survey in today's society. So it's a very, very interesting tool, I believe, for that. So that's my big branding exercise in the coming years, is to make sure people don't say yeek when you're saying it's a survey company you run.
Yeah, that's amazing. That's amazing, Rodolphe. I could probably keep you here and ask you like a million more questions. Maybe a final one for the audience would be, if people want to reach out, connect with you, learn more about the great work that you guys are doing on Potluck, what would be the best way?
Going through my agent. No, well, I'm pretty active on LinkedIn, so LinkedIn is a very good way. I'm trying to build up my Twitter account. I have very, very few followers. Please follow me, even if I tweet every month. And that's pretty much it. The other channels are personal. So yeah, Twitter, LinkedIn.
You did, and so I'm gonna lie. I do have an extra question because you brought up Twitter and LinkedIn, all these different platforms. What's interesting is, have you seen a difference and a shift in how people respond across platforms? There's obviously the question of response rates, but curious because you guys must have so much data, right? Like you have like tens of millions of responses. You have to be seeing like emerging platforms like TikTok, Snapchat, and all these different patterns emerge. Interesting, any insights or non-obvious learnings that you guys have found by working across the spectrum of all these like huge platforms?
Tons of insights. Students are on LinkedIn. Truckers are on Snapchat. Gen Z are not on Facebook anymore. Tons. That's what we learn on a daily basis. That's what our algorithm is learning as well. So yeah, truckers are on Snapchat. That's my favorite one. I'm like, what? And yet, this is where they are. Truckers. If you want to reach truckers, go to Snapchat.
That's amazing. Yeah, it's so funny, right? Like on non-obvious, obviously, but it's like the internet's big enough that even the subsegment of truckers is going to be on a platform like Snapchat. Yeah, it's fantastic. Rodolphe, I don't keep you more. It is amazing, man. I really appreciate it. Merci beaucoup.
Merci beaucoup. It was a pleasure.